Over in the pages of DC Comics, the publisher is looking to revitalize their Flash ongoing series over for the dawn of DC era. The previous creative team of Jeremy Adams and artists like Fernando Passarin are switching hands over to Marvel creators Si Spurrier and Mike Deodato Jr. It's going to be really interesting to see what Spurrier's vision of the Flash property is coming from, because he's recently came off of some X-Men titles over from Marvel. Plus, will this creative team start their own Flash continuity, or will they reference what Adams and Passarin have worked on in the past? My name is Arico Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and explore a brand new era for the Flash in the dawn of DC Flash #1. Before we get deeper into the video, I want to encourage you to consider supporting our channel by hitting that subscribe button and liking the video. Wally West races towards the future with a new all-star creative team. Wally West has never been quicker, more fulfilled, more heroic. His loving family is around him. And yet, something is off, very off. His evolving understanding of his powers has opened Wally to new avenues of sci-fi adventure and attuned his senses to strange new ideas. Something whispers from the dark, vibrations beyond the Speed Force, and as Wally experiments with new creative approaches to the powers, he encounters new realms, mysterious allies, and mind-shattering terrors. A new era for the Scarlet Speedster begins now from the team of Si Spurrier and Mike Deodato Jr. This new Flash #1 is written by Si Spurrier, featuring art from Mike Deodato Jr. We have colors from Trish Mulvihill, letters from Hassan Otsmane-Elhaou, and we also have a cover coming in directly over from Mike Deodato and Trish Mulvihill. Really love how this cover captures the nuanced tone and that really fun expression over from Wally in this Flash series as well. I want to extend a very fast thank you over to Adventures in Poor Taste and dive into some of the really complex layouts over from artist Mike Deodato Jr. in the series here. I really enjoyed this opening sequence in the issue as we have the opportunity to catch back up over with Max Mercury and Impulse. These are two Flash characters that I've enjoyed in a lot of different contexts here, and seeing them pop back up over in the Jeremy Adams run was a ton of fun. One thing that has really kind of caught my interest over in recent Flash titles is how the entire Flash family has been referenced. When readers were at the start of DC Comics Rebirth, we had a much smaller Flash family, and introducing all these supporting players and pieces of continuity has really lent this particular Flash series to also focus on those elements of family that were just instrumental to some of the excellent work from the Jeremy Adams comic book run previously over on The Flash. Over in this issue, we catch up over with Max Mercury and Impulse running into the Speed Force. And in this next page here, I think one of the weird sci-fi aspects of the book comes out in full force as Max Mercury sees a mysterious buffalo warning him about some elements of the Speed Force. This is really looking to thematically introduce the fact that something is wrong. And in the very next sequence over in the comic book, we can even see how these problems with the Speed Force affect the character of Wally West. Wally is trying to save some of the individual civilians over at DC Comics, but is continually apprehended by some gorilla-themed villains in the issue. This comic book debut over for The Flash has so many enticing villainous characters, and I think Si Spurrier has really tapped into Flash's extended rogues gallery to give some really interesting story ideas and clues at what we can potentially see over at upcoming issues as well. I really do find that the script for this particular issue is incredibly detailed. Over on this page that we have up on the screen, we can also tap into the insane and irreverent page layouts over from Mike Deodato Jr., and we can also get introduced to this identity of the Indigo Streak, which has continued to be explored throughout the issue. The end of this battle over with Flash and some of the gorillas is incredibly cryptic, and I love how this sequence was also a springboard over to exploring Wally's greater family. Over in some of these next pages, we get the chance to catch up over at the West home and are introduced back to the supporting cast of Wally's family, including his kids with Irie and Jai, as well as his new baby Wade. I really think that the Flash as an individual being Wally West is so interesting, as he's one of the few DC characters that has a really strong and large family over at the publisher. It was particularly interesting to see how Si Spurrier was able to lend some additional characterization to Wally's partner Linda. Linda is going through a lot of struggles as she recently lost some of her Speed Force powers in the comic book. In a few moments, Si Spurrier actually lends direct text over to the comic book page as opposed to captions or speech balloons in order to flesh out some of Linda's inner thoughts. I really found that this comic book series got me really immersed in Linda as a character and was really drawn to her from a sort of empathetic setting. She's sort of trapped at home amongst a group of speedsters as she's seemingly living her life in slow motion throughout the comic book page here. Really, it's the little details that make Linda feel alive as a human being. The way that Wally West essentially tries to brew her coffee that she can't drink because she's nursing a baby, and what looks to be Wally continuing to forget this sequence again and again and again and continue to brew her coffee, I think just shows the sort of absent-minded nature of Wally and the restraint that Linda has in stopping herself from getting mad over in these sequences. I am really interested to see how Si Spurrier writes Linda in future issues, and out of everybody over in this Flash issue, I think she was the person that I most gravitated to, maybe due to some of her own internal struggles over in this comic book title. Now, I really thought this creative team did a wonderful job building on everything Jeremy Adams established in his really excellent run over for Wally West as a character. Returning to Michael Holt and the terrific tech offices really opens up this amusing comedy element over for Wally West, which is really important because this issue can get really dark in some select moments here. The interactions between Michael and Wally are both ominous, irreverent, and silly here. Getting to see Wally interact with some of the scientists and go up to see Michael a little bit later on in the comic book was really, really interesting. I like how quickly Michael is tuned into the fact that something is wrong with the Speed Force and attempts to warn Wally West before anything bad happens. Wally finds a fluctuation in the Speed Force in the midst of his conversation over with Michael and ends up getting sucked into what looks like maybe an alternate reality or alternate dimension where Wally is teased that the character of the Uncoiled is coming. As you can see, there are just so many villains across this Flash issue, and I really do think that Spurrier has established a really strong foundation for him to explore some of the various rogues that he set up in really cryptic ways across this particular debut issue. Luckily, though, Wally does return over to the present to resume his conversation over with Michael, where they again begin to experiment over with the indigo streak. Michael is unable to come to a conclusion at what that streak actually is and dubs it as a spooky Speed Force stuff sort of phenomenon over in the comic book series. Next up, we also get to check in with the characters of Thunderheart and Animal Girl, also known as Maxine Baker and Irie West here. Watching these two still have a strong relationship that was established over in the Adams run was really, really thrilling for me as a reader. The only real negative I had to say about this sequence is the fact that Mike Deodato draws these characters as looking older than they did in the previous sequence where Irie and Jai were running around the West household. I do think there's a great sequence with Thunderheart a little bit later on in the issue showing her speeding to catch up to her brother who is locked in a mysterious boiler room. This is yet another opportunity where we get to see Si Spurrier tease an upcoming DC villain in a really ominous way as Irie manages to catch up with her brother Jai. One interesting thing to note about this is that Jai is shirtless, and there's a small character lingering in the final panel saying something that is completely intelligible. I found this to be the absolute most horrific sequence over in the issue. I'm so thrilled to see it explored in some additional context, and I'm really shocked to see just how ambitious this Flash debut is, tucking villains in seemingly the corners of select moments in this Flash debut chapter. Over in the next page, we get a return to Wally fighting the gorilla villains yet again, and finally get some additional insight into the Indigo Streak. Over at the end of the chapter, we get to see this villain who may be known as the Uncoiled really come off as a strong and imposing science fiction threat. I am so excited to see where Spurrier and Deodato are headed next with the interpretation of this really harrowing and distant alien over from DC Comics. So at the end of the day here, I think this Flash comic book debut is an incredibly ambitious issue loaded with villains and adventurous science fiction-esque DC concepts here. I am so happy with the way that Spurrier and Deodato were able to capitalize on so many disparate members of the Flash family. There are so many just individual pieces and plot threads that have me really captivated here. I was really drawn into that sequence over with Maxine Baker and Irie West, as well as the mysterious villain teased in a relationship that may have something to do over with Jai. If that wasn't interesting enough here, the way that the Uncoiled are headed into the main aspect of the issue over with Wally West was absolutely thrilling. And I also think that Spurrier has a pitch-perfect characterization over from Linda, capturing some of her internal struggles as she's just lost grip over on some of her Speed Force powers. I want to know from you, did you enjoy this really heady Flash comic book issue as much as I did? What were some of your thoughts on the litany of villains that were introduced? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for catching our video debut over for the Flash issue 1. And we'll be back to see just what science fiction concepts and ancillary Flash characters this comic book is going to include next. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.